I've got a confession to make.
I need to get this off my chest. As a business owner, we all make mistakes.
I've got to confess.
And we are live. It's time for another episode of Confessions of a Business Owner. And today I am joined by a very special guest, Mikael Dia. So honestly, I'm really excited for this episode because I've been having a whole bunch of conversations with Mikael off air, and I think he's got a lot of awesome stuff to share with this audience. Now, Mikael is doing something phenomenal in the software space with his company, Funnelytics. And I look at this tool, and when I had my marketing agency, I've looked at this and gone, why didn't this exist when we had the agency? So, Mikael, thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun. Sun is shining in Toronto. I'm in Toronto, and I know you're all the way on the other side of the world. So thanks for getting up early and having this conversation with me. It's going to be awesome.
I tell you what, based on our other conversations, I am more than happy to get up early to be a part of this. Now, what's really cool for anyone on the video is that my video should get lighter as things go on through the day. It's early here, and Mikael's is going to get darker. So we're going to see this shift in the video scene, which would be cool. But some of the magic that is the internet is we get to communicate with people around the world and share information and ideas instantaneously, which I just think is fantastic. Now, I want to lead this episode off with just spending a moment talking about what your tool is, Funnelytics, because as I mentioned, I'm like, kind of like, that sore point of like, I wish we had it back in the day. So take us through that.
Yeah. So, I was also running an agency, and it was the same kind of mindset. I wanted this tool for myself, and I decided to build it for myself. And actually, the idea came around in 2013. That's when I had the initial idea, and I launched my agency at the end of 2014. So I didn't actually start developing Funnelytics until actually much later than that, 2016. But in 2013, I actually called it Project Game Changer because I was running a tech business in the language space at the time, and I was consulting clients. I was learning about funnels and email marketing and landing pages, conversion optimization. I was doing all of that stuff around funnels and advertising and turning traffic into actual profit. And I really wanted a tool. I kept thinking to myself, like, wouldn't it be really sweet if I could have a tool where I could map out my funnel just like I would on a whiteboard, right? Because on a whiteboard, you sit there and you say, okay, well, Facebook ads go to this landing page, and then from there, they go to a thank you page, and then there's an email follow-up sequence, and you kind of just draw it all out to kind of, get your idea onto a paper or a whiteboard. Then you use something like ClickFunnels or whatever, WordPress or whatever page builder to kind of actually build your pages. And then you have to use really cumbersome, not crappy, but pain in the ass analytics tools to try and figure out what's actually happening with your funnel. How are people really flowing to the checkout page or the application page or whatever it is that you're trying to measure? And you kind of have to mash all of this stuff together. And back in 2013, I was like, wouldn't it be really sweet if I could just have a tool that allowed me to map my funnel on a canvas using a drag and drop builder, kind of like a Lucid chart or, those org chart type of softwares. And then I could hit a switch and I could instantly see how people flow through my funnels. I could see how people are converting from one page to another in my emails and my ads. And then I could see visually what was working, what's not, and make decisions based on that. So that was always my idea back in 2013. And 2016 is when I started developing it. And now it's out there. It's in the world. So it's been an interesting journey on that front.
I'll tell you what, you hit the pain point well. And like I go back, I was, in the agency world many, many years ago now, but you just described us perfectly. Like we were butchering analytics or Google
Yeah.
Analytics to try and get this stuff together and using Google spreadsheets. And even then, I hate to admit it, I'm not sure how accurate what we put together was because it was so complex.
Yeah, it was.
And all we
And
really
it
wanted
still
to
is.
know what was working, what was not working on the different platforms. But it was a real challenge.
And then a lot of times, the funny thing is, I don't want to necessarily get too deep in the technical side of things right now, but a lot of people, one of the biggest problems that we face in terms of analytics today is attribution, right? Everybody talks about, okay, well, do you attribute the conversion to the first time somebody clicked, or is it through the retargeting ad, or is it through the email? Where do you attribute the sale to, and that kind of stuff? And the reality is, people take very distinct steps in order to get to the goal, and that sequence of steps may take a week, it may take 30 days, it may all happen in the same day. But what you really need to understand is the path that people are taking. You need to understand that, okay, they clicked on an ad, they landed on a page, they opted in, then they didn't do anything, then they hit a retargeting ad, read a blog post, and then went to the sales page, whatever, right? Whatever that path is, that's what you need to understand. The problem is, when you're looking at a chart, or you're looking at a spreadsheet, or you're looking at a graph, how are you supposed to know? How are you supposed to visually understand the path that somebody took? That's the thing that we're trying to solve with Funnelytics. We're trying to make it visual so that you can actually see how people are flowing through your funnels, through your marketing. And that way you're not sitting there thinking, oh, well, actually, it's my retargeting ad that made me my sale. No, it's this path that made you your sale. So if you can push people through that path more often, you're going to make more sales, right? So that's the thing that we're trying to solve, and the clarity we're trying to bring with Funnelytics.
Now, for anyone listening to this episode, attribution is really another word for who gets the credit. So it's like who gets the credit for making the conversion. And I see this honestly as a big problem for many, many business owners, because these days we're all spending money online advertising or SEO or social media campaigns, and measuring the effectiveness of this, or seeing that flow, is something that is going to really help the average business owner understand what is and isn't working, or what they should be putting attention into. Too often, I think account managers, so often we can think a very smooth talking marketing account manager may perceive us that things are happening in a certain way, when that may not be the truth at all. There's other factors at play in a big way. So I think it's going to bring a lot of light to that stage of things. Now, this show isn't strictly a marketing show or anything like that, but I really think it's such an important thing to cover, because we're all in the game of attaining customers. It's a very, very important part of what we do.
Absolutely.
So we're going to bring into the next part here. And I must say is that before anyone comes on the show, is I get them to type in a box what their confession is going to be, because you have to confess if you're going to come on Confessions of a Business Owner. Your one's going to be an interesting one. I really can't wait to hear this one from there. Now, I won't spoil it, but I believe it starts with a holiday. So this is your time to confess, Mikael. Tell us right now, how did this come to be?
Okay, so I think it's important that I take you back a little bit to understand my mindset and why I started an agency, and ultimately why I decided to completely shut it down after we were doing well over $1 million a year in the business. And I really always wanted to. So take it back to 2011. I moved to London. I moved to the UK. I was living in London and doing my MBA degree. And throughout the entire MBA degree, I was learning about marketing funnels and learning about marketing, and just figuring out how to sell online, and really mastering that craft, as opposed to paying attention to my teachers in terms of like accounting and finance and the stuff that they teach you in business school. But throughout my MBA degree, I was, one of my good friends was also an entrepreneur, randomly enough, actually also from Toronto. and he had sold a currency brokerage firm here in Toronto for about 5 million or just under $5 million. So he was very successful, young guy. And throughout the entire time, we were trying to figure out what is the venture, what is the thing that we are going to start, because neither of us wanted to actually get a job. We both knew that. And he at the end of the MBA degree, I remember he called me up and he's like, Mikael, I got it. I know what we're going to do. I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do, Colin? He's like, we're going to start a Mandarin school. I was like, what?
Could you
A
just
Mandarin?
repeat that? Could you just repeat that last sentence there? Sorry, Mikael, we just had an audio glitch.
Yeah.
What did he say you were going to do?
He's like, Colin, he's like, Mikael, I know what we're going to do. I was like, okay, what are we going to do, Colin? He's like, Mikael, we're going to start a Mandarin school. I was like, what? A Mandarin school? Like teaching Chinese? And he's like, yep. I was like, first of all, I don't even speak Chinese. I've never even been to China. So what are you talking about? And he also doesn't speak Mandarin or anything like that. So I was like, okay. But long story short, he kind of said, look, I have this opportunity to license a curriculum and we can start this school in London, and you take care of the marketing because, that's what you love. That's what you're passionate about. That's what you talk about all the time. I'll take care of the operations and getting teachers and all of that stuff. So that's what we did. We started a Mandarin school, and within 3 months, we grew to over $30,000 a month. And then in 8 months, we sold that for about $450,000. So it grew very fast. And it was all because of the marketing funnels. It was the first time I had real success. And I can go and share stories on all of the failures that I've had trying to set up marketing funnels and all of that beforehand. But this was the first real funnel where I spent money on advertising and got a consistent flow of customers coming into the door. And I was hooked after that, right? I was hooked on this concept of marketing funnels. I was like, if I can do this for a Mandarin school, I can do this for anything. I can do this for any business. Like there's, I know nothing about this industry, this niche, so I can definitely do it for other stuff. And after we exited that business, we went on to start another tech business and still in the language space. But I was always kind of consulting and helping business owners with these marketing funnels and giving them strategies around marketing. And I grew to really, really love it. I grew to have a passion around this skill set, and my skill set got better and better. And I put in the time and trial and error. And over time, I really wanted to build my own agency to help business owners at a bigger scale, right? And that's kind of where I decided to launch my agency. And this is in 2014. I decided to launch an agency because I really wanted to service more clients around this skill set that I had acquired. Now, to be honest, the reason why I wanted an agency as opposed to a coaching business or courses or anything like that was because of the dollars, right? I remember going to an event, and at that event, the person who was kind of teaching drew a triangle and said, look, if you want the top dollars, you do done for you services. If you want middle, you do done with you. If you want lower ticket, you do it yourself style. And at the time I was like, I want to make a lot of money. So let's go to the done with you level and let's start selling services.
Great intentions. That's the way to view it. Excellent.
Exactly. Like the top dollar, let's do that. So that's where the agency started. And the funny thing is, even though I built this skill set around marketing funnels, the first 18 months of our agency was very tricky, very hard to acquire customers. We did a lot of stuff to try and get a consistent flow of customers. You're if you're in the kind of online marketing space, they talk a lot about webinars, and they talk a lot about 3-part video trainings and capturing leads by giving people, ebooks or lead magnets that they call them. And we tried all of that stuff, right, with our marketing agency, and nothing really worked. But then something changed after 18 months. We kind of shifted our mindset and really put ourselves in the shoes of our customer and asked ourselves, like, okay, clearly all of this stuff that we've done doesn't really work. So if I was an actual business owner looking for these services, what would I not want to go through in order to actually find somebody to get services? So instead of asking ourselves, okay, well, what do I want? We ask ourselves, what would I not want? And then all of a sudden, a list of things that we were doing, we're like, actually, I would never want to sit through a 60-minute webinar to try and figure out whether or not this is the right person, because I don't want to learn anything. As a business owner, I would want to know a couple of things. I wouldn't want to know, do you understand my problem? Have you solved my problem before? Can you show me proof that you've solved my problem before? How can I contact you? That's it. That's all I would want.
Ooh, there's a really valuable lesson in that. I'm even going to pull it up. I try not to in these stories, but that is such a powerful insight, because don't you find it interesting? There's people out there that the one I love, and I've seen this, is like a car mechanic. Okay.
Yep.
I don't want to learn how to fix my car. I don't want to watch a webinar on how to fix my car. I'm not interested in that. But like what you just said is exactly what I'm interested in.
Exactly.
So,
and the funny thing is, I use the same analogy, except I use, imagine your toilet is broken. Do you want to sit through a webinar learning how do I fix my toilet? No, you don't care. You just want to know.
Maybe.
Depends what's floating in your toilet, I guess, right? So ultimately, that's the reality of services, right? When you're looking for done for you services, when you're looking for somebody to help you solve a problem by providing you with a service, that's the mindset that they approach it with. And when we made that shift, it changed our marketing funnel. It changed what we were doing, and instantly, literally almost overnight, after we implemented our new marketing funnel, our sales skyrocketed, our lead flow skyrocketed, everything kind of shifted and started working really well. In the first 18 months of business, we probably did about $200,000 or so in revenue. The following 18 months, we did over $1 million. It went poof, like this. But after a few months of hitting, 150, 160, peaking around 160, but fluctuating pretty much for a few months between $100,000 to $160,000, there's another part of a business, which is called the operations, that didn't actually keep up, right? We went like this with our sales, but our operations, we were still kind of building as we were kind of going. And the funny thing with operations is it's like building a conveyor belt, right? I always kind of think of the Ford manufacturing plant of when they build cars. And your goal as a business owner, especially when you work on the operations side, is you're building this conveyor belt so that when clients come on, they go all the way through the conveyor belt and things are installed, and then boom, they're out. But when your sales go too fast, you're putting people on a conveyor belt that's not built yet. So like your employees and your team is trying to build it, and then poof, like people fall off on the front, right? And you're just continuously trying to build. And it doesn't end until hopefully at some point you get the whole conveyor belt built. But throughout that process, you've got people on that conveyor belt and they're falling off the front, or they're getting upset. There's fires that you have to put out. You're trying to train your team on how to build the conveyor belt. And there's all of these aspects. And in February of last year, my wife and my daughter was born in October. So my daughter was about 5 months old. And we decided to take a trip to San Diego. And the business was doing really well. We were crushing it in terms of revenue. Money was flowing in. I had a team of 9 people full time, and I decided to take a trip with my wife and my 5-month-old daughter. And throughout the entire trip, literally the entire 2 weeks, from morning until night, my wife would walk by herself along the beach, up and down the boardwalk, while I was on calls, on emails, on Skype, clients calling me saying that, hey, I hired you guys and I paid you a lot of money to work with me. My team calling me because things weren't going well, or clients were either complaining or they just didn't know how to do a specific thing. Even when I was eating dinner, my wife was sitting next to me, and we were in this nice hotel, and she could feel the stress, coming out of me, and she didn't want to really be near me. When I was laying at bed at night, I was thinking about all the crap I had to do the next day, and it was the worst. We really, at the end of the trip, my wife pretty much said to me that she wished she didn't go on this trip. It was our first trip as a young family, and with our 5-month-old daughter, and she just wished she didn't do it because it wasn't fun. It wasn't nice. It wasn't a good experience, and it wasn't for me either. It wasn't the reason why I wanted to build a business. Yes, I was passionate about the service that we were giving our clients. I was passionate about what I was doing, but I was not passionate about my lifestyle anymore. I was not passionate about how I was living my life. And we were making a lot of money, but I had no freedom, and I was miserable. So when I came home after that trip, I called my sales team and my acquisition team, the guys who were doing my Facebook ads, and I said, turn it all off. Just no more leads. Turn off the ads. Turn off the funnel. And literally from one day to the next, our calendar was full in terms of calls and proposals and stuff like that, to slowly just going down to zero, completely trickling down. And then over the next 6 months, I just worked towards finishing our contracts, letting go of my entire team. And there were a lot of times in between, it's not an easy decision to shut down after working so hard to grow a business and trying everything you can to make it to that $1 million mark, to now all of a sudden decide, what, I'm going to shut this down. It wasn't an easy decision. But over the course of that 6 months, I really dug deep inside myself to figure out, do I want to keep doing this? Because there's really 2 paths as to where I was. It was either we keep pushing. Maybe we work with slightly higher level clients so that we don't, it's not that they're giving us their entire marketing budget and they either make or break it. I see that a lot of agencies either, if they are working with smaller businesses, they tend to move towards bigger style companies, brands that have bigger budgets, or they work very, very, very niche where they can build that one conveyor belt and then they step away. But the entire reason why I built my business was because I was so passionate about sharing my knowledge and my expertise with our clients that we brought on. So if we were to build this conveyor belt that was just super niche and super focused, I have nothing in terms of having an impact on my customers and feeling actually fulfilled. So I just decided I'm not doing it anymore, and I started dwindling it down, and it was an interesting journey. It was an interesting transition for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm sure many people, myself included, can relate to that. I had a very similar experience myself. But one of the things I look at is often it's a moment in something like a holiday when we get that perspective we perhaps weren't seeing. So was that moment on your holiday really that driving force in seeing, I suppose, how you were behaving in the world and how your business was happening was actually costing you more than it was actually worth?
I think it was the tipping point for sure. I think it was the realization moment. I think prior to it, I knew subconsciously and I knew deep down that I wasn't really enjoying this. But the difference was that I spent so much time growing my business and working so hard that I didn't really acknowledge it, right? I just said, this is part of the process. It's part of the process of building a business. You've got to go through this struggle. But it was the fact that I actually went on a vacation, and it was an intended vacation with my wife and my daughter, that vacation didn't happen. That's when I had the realization that actually, no, like that's not why I built a business. That's not why I decided to be an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, unlike the rest of society, we have the choice of carving our own path. We have the choice of building, choosing where we want to go and how we want to live our life. And that's not how I wanted it. So that was really the tipping point, and that was really the moment of realization. But I think deep down, I knew that I was working way more than I wanted to. And I had way more pressure and stress that I really wanted to, but I just kind of thought that was normal, right? I thought that's how it had to be. It's not at all, actually. So, but yeah,
I find for people that are in that stage, I find they're suffering from something called like somedayitis, where they feel that someday it's just going to get better if they keep doing what they do. And I'm yet to find someone that continued on that path. Is that what you were going through? Did you just feel that if you continued doing what you're doing, eventually you'd grow to a stage where you didn't need to work as many hours? Or that you
I think at the beginning of the year, you kind of ride the high of, like, it's like, okay, well, I'm lacking freedom over here, but I'm making a ton of money over here. So it's like, you have it's almost having like the two little angel and devil on your shoulder. It's like,
absolutely.
Well, even though you're looking for that freedom, you're thinking, well, eventually I'm going to be able to buy my freedom. And the reality is you don't buy freedom. That's not how it works. There's things that you have to do in order to create freedom. Yes, you use money and you use the tool of capital in order to build those systems and put the people and the things in place to create the freedom. But I wasn't doing that. I wasn't creating freedom over here. I wasn't creating the processes and the things that would allow me to have freedom. And it was one of those things where I had to kind of make that decision. Do I keep going? And do I take a step back and try to figure out how do I build the processes to create freedom? Or is this really even the type of business that I want in the first place? Do I even want to provide these done for you services to, let's be honest, a lot of times very ungrateful clients and very ungrateful business owners? Of course you have to take responsibility and blame, and anything that happens it's your choice, right? Whether you set expectations properly or whatnot. But is that the type of business that I really wanted to establish, to develop? So after spending a lot of time and reflecting and writing in journals, and which I never ever did, by the way, before this incident, but after I went away with my wife, I for some reason felt very compelled to kind of write my emotions and my thoughts down. And after doing so, and after kind of saying, all right, I'm not taking on any more clients right now, I went through about 4 months where in my mind I was still thinking, well, maybe I will. Maybe I'll turn the valve back on, right? Maybe I'll get it going again. But I just never wanted to. Over the course of time, I just don't want to do this. That's not the type of business I want to run. So, I decided not to.
So after this experience has passed, and it's been a few years since that's happened, do you look back?
This happened last February.
Oh, this is last February. Sorry, I thought this
Yeah.
happened a touch earlier. So this is
No.
still a little bit fresh, but do you reflect on that time and think about what you could have done differently?
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's the reality of, yes, I could easily look back and made changes in terms of how I built the agency and the types of clients I decided to take on, and how niche I would go in terms of the type of businesses and and the services that we would provide and stuff like that. I could have definitely gone down that path a little bit more. But would I have done things differently? I mean, no. The reality is, the only thing I would have done differently is probably not provided done for you services. I probably would have done with you, or more of a implementation program, because a lot of times the mindset that a customer comes to you with when they're looking for done for you services is the wrong mindset. A lot of times they think that you are the savior and the solution to their problem, when in reality, they still have to be the CEO. They still have to be the business owner. That's something for another conversation. In terms of whether I would have done it differently, I don't think so. I think, I'm glad I went through this experience. I'm glad I went through this low, because it really made me realize what my priorities are in my life. It really made me realize, like, why am I actually an entrepreneur? Why am I doing this? And it's not actually for the money. Yes, I do want to make a lot of money as a business owner. It's about creating a lot of profit, but there's other pillars that matter in terms of being a business owner and in terms of being an entrepreneur. And I was neglecting those other pillars. And those three other pillars, I kind of look at it as four very specific pillars of an entrepreneur. And I only had one, which was profit.
So what are the other pillars then?
So I look at entrepreneurs, at least modern day entrepreneurs, to have kind of four core pillars. The first is to profit, right? We all want to build a highly profitable business. And that's kind of the top pillar. It's creating that highly profitable business. But the profitable business that you create has to create impact on the marketplace that you're going after, right? The last thing I want to be doing is creating widgets that, selling pet rocks, for example, that don't really do anything for anybody. All it is making me money, but it's not really actually helping my customer or my dream client achieve the mountaintop that they want to reach, right? If I'm not really in the business of transforming people's lives or creating an impact on my customers, then it's not the type of business that I want to be building. So you need to build a highly profitable business that creates impact, but that also creates massive freedom in your life, right? At the end of the day, freedom is huge. We as entrepreneurs, we kind of always look at making money, but trying to figure out how to balance that freedom. How do you kind of remove yourself from that business? That means creating systems and processes and focusing on the 80-20 rule, and focusing on things that only provide the biggest results in terms of your business, as opposed to always constantly be doing. And then the fourth pillar is fulfillment. I need to be able to wake up every single day and feel fulfilled, feel excited about what I'm doing. Because again, if I'm selling widgets or whatever I'm selling, and it doesn't really fulfill me, it's just this thing that's over here, making me passive income. Like, look, I'm not against passive income, but if I'm going to wake up every single day, I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel motivated. I want to attack my day with this force. And in order for that to happen, you need to define what it is that fulfills you. And you need to look at your projects and what you're doing to ask yourself, am I fulfilling my, am I creating motivation, and is there fulfillment in my actual day-to-day, my weeks, my months, etc. So those are the kind of the four pillars to create a highly profitable business that creates massive impact on the marketplace, provides you with freedom, and fulfills you every single day.
I think that's a fantastic perspective and way of looking at it. I can see that in my own journey has been something that's been very important to me. Because if you've got the profit, like you've mentioned there, without the others, It's funny how the profit doesn't taste as good. It's funny how it can make you a little bit sour on the inside, I'll even say. So it's a really interesting perspective.
It's funny how you hear the stories all the time of multimillionaires and billionaires who are miserable, who are just unhappy with their life. And why is that? Well, it's because money doesn't actually solve everything. It doesn't really. Does it create happiness? No, it doesn't. Like, you have to, if you can't be fulfilled without having money, you're going to have problems even when you do have money. You should be able to figure out what fulfills you prior to you even making money. And if you don't have that, then that's a problem.
At Outsourcing Angel, which is my virtual assistant company, one of the things we looked at is that when we made it about the money, is it wasn't as enjoyable as when we made it about changing the Philippines. So one of the things we're really big on is being a social enterprise and making change over there. And it's funny that when we started doing that stuff many, many years ago, and like I got a photo of the team doing some work in the Philippines and making the Philippines better, it was like it changed my whole life. It changed my perspective. I was like, this is what matters. It's like the company went from something that I perhaps looked at on a P&L to like I could see the positive impact it was making on the world. And that fulfillment level just went through the roof. And my love of the business and how fulfilled and happy and all those pillars we've mentioned there just became so much more for me in general. It improved the quality of my life on a massive, massive way.
And you're creating massive impact, which is incredible. And another funny realization of this, especially on the impact side, I have another business in the nutrition space, which does very well in terms of money wise. We do well. I mean, well is relative, but we do pretty well in terms of profit and money. But the funny thing is, over the course of the last 12-ish months, maybe a little longer, we've been very, very focused on optimizing money, right? Looking at conversions, getting more customers, really focusing solely on how do we make more money? How do we increase our average day? Right now we're doing about $5,000 a day with that business. And we're always looking at what can we tweak in order to bring that from 5 to 6 to 7 and just keep increasing our money. And the funny thing is, something happened in the middle of last year, or probably around August or so of last year, where our sales started just going down. Slowly but steadily started going down every single day, every single month. And to the point where we went from, consistently hitting $5,000, $6,000, sometimes $7,000 a day, every single day, to like now hitting $3,500, $3,000, sometimes $2,500, and kind of fluctuating around there. And the funny thing is, after a while, we sat down, myself and my business partner in this business, we sat down and we said, why are we really doing this? Like, every single day we get up and we try and figure out how do we get our sales back up, right? And we went away to an event and we started asking ourselves, like, why are we really doing this? Like, ClickFunnels, I'm sure you know ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson, but they have a way of measuring success. And the way they do it is they have a nice big TV on their wall. And the way they look at success is how many active users are on the platform, how many leads have those users generated, how many funnels have those users created, and how much money have those users generated for themselves. None of those metrics revolve around how much money did ClickFunnels make, how many customers did ClickFunnels bring in this month, or how many leads did ClickFunnels bring in this month. And once we started looking at that, we asked ourselves, what is it that we're striving for? Like, what is our board? Right now, our board is literally saying, how much money did Anthony and Mikael make, right? The two business partners. And that removes all morale from your team. Customers and people coming to your site sense it, because everything you're trying to do is about selling and trying to convert them into customers. So we made a shift recently where the company was 100% focused on the impact and focused on our customers and seeing the success. What are those metrics for us as a business where it's, how much weight did our customers actually lose? How many people graduated from our program? How many people actually had this epiphany and whatnot? And as we started putting that vibe and that energy and that message out there, all of a sudden now our sales are back up. We're sitting at 6,000, 7,000 back up without making any changes to our funnels or our conversions or anything like that, because it's no longer about myself and my business partner. It's about the customer and who we're trying to help and the impact we're really trying to have. And people sense it, people feel it, people see your energy and how you approach business when you come at it in the sense that I'm here to help you, or like in your case, I'm here to make the Philippines better. All of a sudden your sales start going back up and your profit starts going back up. So if you focus too much on the profit, if you focus too much on the money, you're going to end up losing a lot of times.
Absolutely. I often think the more you focus about the money, the worse things actually get within a business. It's like, don't get me wrong, we all, want the money and we want to see financial success, but it's never the thing that creates it. It's the success of your customers. And I look at a nutrition business particularly, or in the fitness space, and it's like you're having such a high impact on the quality of someone's life. Like what a difference it can make to someone if they drop the weight or get their health in order to what they do. It's a phenomenal impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It makes a huge difference. And that was the biggest shift for me when I decided to stop the agency. And I was really feeling that we were making profit, but I didn't have the impact. I didn't have the freedom. I didn't have the fulfillment. So it wasn't worth it. And that's why I decided to shut it down.
Well, it sounds like a good decision in the end, and especially for your wife and child, which are very important. They should get their own pillar. They get to be a pillar themselves, the family pillar.
Yeah, well, exactly. To me, the family is part of the fulfillment and the freedom. And, it's like my wife and my daughter keep everything glued together. There's no modern day entrepreneur without the relationship and what they bring to me. So absolutely.
I think that's a great thing. Now, what I want to ask then is, this story you've told is sadly a familiar thing for many, many business owners. I think there's a lot of people out there that are kind of going through this at the moment, where they're in the hustle, in the grind, possibly not needing to be. But what would you tell someone who's going through a similar experience to what you've just had?
I would look, you have to define what matters to you. Why are you doing this in the first place? Why did you decide to be an entrepreneur? Why did you decide to grow the company that you're growing? What is it for? Because a lot of times as you go through the process, that gets lost. It gets lost in terms of you forget that you actually started to do this because you were fulfilled or you were excited by the prospect of serving this particular community, or running your local gym because of what it did. And then all of a sudden the stress and the reality of operating a business has changed your actual motivation, right? And now you're no longer motivated by the thing. You're just trying to keep your head above water because you've got so much stuff to do. A lot of times you have to take a step back, take a notebook and write down, reflect back onto the day you started this business. Why did you do it? What were you trying to gain from it? Have you achieved that? And is there a path for you to actually get to that thing based on the journey you're currently on? If the answer is no, then a lot of times it's better to let something go and move on and move to something that will get you to that path than to continue down something that you actually aren't happy with, isn't really fulfilling you. So you have to take a step back and ask yourself, well, why did I do this in the first place? And am I getting towards there? Because if not, what's the point? Why are you doing it to continue? That's the main thing.
Absolutely. I agree with that in a big way. And I look at it and go, I think there's a lot of loyalty to business owners where we don't like to quit. We don't like to give up. And we'll even, I suppose, pursue a bad idea out of ego just to prove that we could do it.
Ego can be, ego is not a good thing. I mean, yes, you need to be confident that you can make something happen. You need to, have a vision and execute and be extremely confident and believe that it's going to happen. But don't let your ego get the best of you by making you think that you're better than everything, or that your decisions are perfect, or that everything that you touch is going to come to fruition, or just because you see somebody else making whatever $100,000 a month on their Facebook feeds and standing in front of their Lamborghini, does not mean that that is reality. It does not mean that, and even if it is, it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your journey and the path that you're on, or what fulfills you and what gets you excited. So you have to let your ego out of the door. You have to keep your ego in check, because it can crush you. It really can.
I agree on that one as well. I think I held on to my agency for probably about 6 months longer than I should have.
Yeah.
I had had a lot of those feelings and could see that I almost kept telling myself that you can solve this. Like, I was like, no, you've made right decisions. I kept backing it. And it's only when I let go of the ego and could actually see, well, hang on, there's actually easier ways of getting to where you really want to be that aren't in this agency. But still, it was like this stubbornness was within me that don't wanting to fight. So it can be a difficult battle.
Oh, definitely. And the reality is, nobody wants to admit that they made the wrong decision, right? Just because, and a lot of times it's because you're admitting failure in a sense, but you're not. You have to realize that life and entrepreneurship and everything that we do is a journey. There's no end. It's, there's only one end, and that's unfortunately when we're buried and we're gone. But until then, it's just a journey. There's no real destination, and there is no such thing as a right or wrong. Okay, maybe there are some right or wrong decisions. Maybe there's some, let's just say there's some stupid decisions that you should be careful with. But ultimately on this journey, like whatever you do, as long as you do it with integrity and you're trying to, get somewhere, just because it wasn't for you does not mean that you made the wrong decision, and doesn't mean that you failed. Actually, all it's done is it means that you've learned something, and now you can move forward and you can keep going on your journey. You can pick yourself back up. A lot of times, and the biggest thing for me, the biggest thing that I've found around that is because as a society, we often chase that one thing. We often want to achieve or get to that one thing that we define as success, right? We define as, oh, if I can just, what is that one thing that is going to, what is that my passion? Like you look at celebrities, or you look at athletes, or you look at, successful business owners, and you're like, oh yeah, they found their one thing. They found the thing that's going to make them, and the reality is, that's not how you're supposed to look at it. There is no such thing as the one thing that ultimately fulfills you. And I learned this in 2011. I was sitting down. So at the time, I was learning about online marketing, and I was learning about all of this stuff. And I had actually started a t-shirt company, and I really, that's a long story, but I really was kind of lost in terms, I graduated as an engineer. I was working as an engineer. I hated my job. I hated everything that I was doing in terms of commuting and doing these AutoCAD drawings. And I was really miserable as an engineer. And I knew I didn't want to do that. And my roommate at the time was working for an advertising company, an advertising agency, a small little boutique advertising agency here in Toronto. He was working directly with the CEO, founder of the company. And they were doing pretty well, probably around like 10 million or so a year in terms of revenue, working with fairly big brands, big projects. And I asked him, I got the chance to sit with the owner of the company, and I asked him, how did you figure out that advertising was your passion? How did you figure out that that's the thing that you wanted to start? And he looked at me and he said, Mikael, don't get it twisted. Advertising is not the thing that I'm passionate about. In fact, I'm actually really, what motivates me, what gets me excited is 4 very distinct things. Number one is I always want to be surrounded with creative people who are smarter than me. I always want to come into a room and brainstorm with people who I know are smarter than me and who are very creative, very right brain. Number 2 is I always want to be working on new dynamic projects every single day, right? I always want diversity in my days. Number 3 is I love to strategize these visions and then turn them into reality. Have these ideas and then turn them into reality and actually see them in the real time. And number 4 is being my own boss, dictating when I work, my own schedule, having that freedom. It just so happens that advertising fulfills these 4 boxes. A lot of times people approach it the other way around. They try to figure out what is that one thing, and then they hope that that one thing is going to fulfill them.
That's a great perspective, because there's a number of fields, but that ultimately is such a unique way of thinking about what to get into.
Yeah, because the funny thing is, there's a lot of different things that can fulfill those 4 boxes, right? It doesn't have to be advertising. There's other opportunities and other things. And ultimately, I went home that day after I had that conversation with him, and it completely changed my life. Ever since then, even, I showed you, I have notebooks here, but I went home that day and I wrote down, what are my 4 things? What are the 4 boxes that make me excited? What are the things that if I could do every single day, I would feel fulfilled and motivated, and I feel like I've accomplished something in my day? So I wrote down what my 4 things are, which at the time they've changed now, but they're learn. If I could learn something every single day, that gets me excited, that gets me pumped up. I feel like I've accomplished something, right? Second is build. And that's probably why I was an engineer. I went to school for engineering. As a kid, I loved to look at a puzzle or play with Lego and actually build the pieces. And more so than just seeing it in reality, actually taking the steps and breaking them down and actually executing on that really pumps me up, really gets me excited. Number 3 is advise. If I can have these types of conversations, if I can advise people, if I can share my thoughts and my knowledge and give people that epiphany moment, that aha moment, whether it comes from, it's about relationships or life or philosophy or business, it doesn't really matter. But having those types of conversations really motivate me, really fulfill me, really make me excited. And lastly, again, at the time, was freedom. If I could do what I want, when I want, that was something that motivated me. And it just so happens that building an online business starts fulfilling these boxes, right? It just so happens that learning about online business. But ever since that moment, I actually, like you can see here in this notebook, you can see the tabs here. I don't know, maybe not with the sun. So it says learn, build, advise, and invest at the time. But my everything that I did and everything I do to this day, I evaluate my opportunities and my projects and everything based on those things. So when I decided to go to London to do my MBA degree, I sat down and I was like, well, I could go to London. I mean, I definitely learned something. I'm going to build my network and build, relationships and whatnot. I'm probably not going to advise very much, but I'm certainly going to have a lot more freedom than working this 9-to-5 job. All right, let's do it. Same thing with when I started my Mandarin language school. There's the same thought process. I know nothing about Mandarin. And if I was chasing that one thing, I would have never jumped into it, because why would I build a Mandarin language school? That's certainly not going to be that one thing that's going to drive me and get me excited. So, but now as I was evaluating, I'm like, I'm definitely going to learn something. I'm going to get to apply all of this stuff that I've learned about digital marketing, and I'm going to get to build my marketing campaigns and my funnels. I'm going to have a lot more freedom than working, it's my own business. So I'm going to have a lot more freedom. okay, I'm not going to be able to fill out my advice box again because I don't speak Chinese, but at least I get to knock three of the four, and let's roll with it. And by the way, this is something I've used ever since 2011. This is how I evaluate everything. I've tried 3 boxes. I've tried 6 boxes, 5 boxes. It is 4. 4 provides an equilibrium. The funny thing too is a lot of times what ends up happening is if you feel like a lack of motivation, or if you feel that something isn't going right in your day, or for an extended period of time, a lot of the times what I found is that it's because you haven't fulfilled one of your 4 boxes for an extended period of time. So to give you an example, one of my friends, one of his boxes is adventure. He loves being outdoors. He loves being active. He loves having, various adventures, but he works in a corporate job in a building here in downtown Toronto. So I remember chatting with him. We were having dinner and he just was miserable. He was unhappy. And the funny thing is his job actually kind of fulfilled him, but he thought the problem was his job. But then as we went through this exercise together, he realized that he just hadn't had any adventure in his life whatsoever for the past 8 months. And there was no adventure in sight. Like he hadn't booked a trip or planned anything to do anything to get himself outdoors. Now, all of a sudden, when he started realizing that, he's like, okay, well, now I've got to make an effort to find and figure out how am I going to fulfill this particular box so that every single day, or at least my life as a whole, is always providing me fulfillment. And that exercise, that thing alone really changed everything for me. And it changed everything in terms of stop chasing that one thing. I think it was a big reason why I was able to let go of the agency, because I was looking at what I was doing and I was evaluating it against my 4 boxes, and there's just no fulfillment. I had no freedom. I wasn't learning anymore. I was barely building. Yes, I was building a team and stuff. And at the beginning of the agency, I was advising my clients, but because we'd scaled so quickly, I had to try to remove myself from the clients, and I wasn't advising anybody anymore. I literally was sitting there just building every single day, trying to figure out how to build this team. And I wasn't fulfilled. And I knew that, and it made it a little bit easier for me to kind of step away from it.
What an interesting framework or structure you've been able to create. And I think it's very powerful that you can recognize that and evaluate that on past and future ventures. Because you can almost pick, it's like, okay, well, if I've got no freedom and no fulfillment, then this is probably something I'm not going to pursue long term, because I'll just end up hating it.
So look, this is, you can see here, I have a bunch of post-its, but this is,
he's got
so
the
now
board up. Now, for anyone on the video, you should be able to see this right now, is he's literally got the squares pointed up. And I think that's keeping it front of mind as well is very, very cool.
And they've evolved, they've changed over the years. And as we evolve as business owners and entrepreneurs and people and humans, because this isn't just about entrepreneurs or anything like that. It's about your life as a whole. But the funny thing is I have these kind of 4 boxes, and anything that doesn't fulfill these 4 boxes or doesn't fit in one of those, I put it in the other box. And my job is to figure out how to get somebody else to do that, because ultimately I know it doesn't fulfill me. It doesn't get me excited. So if it fits in the other box, my job is to delegate it, to give it to somebody else, because that's the framework I try to live my life by.
I think that's brilliant on many levels. I'd hate to be in the other box, though. I don't want to end up in that category. I've got to make sure I nail one of the other ones.
No, absolutely no. Because right now my boxes are evolution, architect, advise, and freedom. And this is evolution to me, right? This is upgrading my mind and evolving as a human and having these kinds of conversations. That's where this fits, because it fulfills me. It gets me excited. And it also fulfills my advice box, having these conversations. I'm advising your audience. I'm advising you and that kind of stuff. And that's how I look at it. And I could do only this today, and I feel like I've accomplished something today, and I feel fulfilled. I could go home and cool, I've done something, and I'm energized, I'm pumped up, right? So that's how I look at things.
Absolutely. And I think many people listening to this podcast are going to take a lot of things away. Even I'm sitting here, myself included, going, I've got to start thinking what are my 4 things? I need to look at this. Have I been congruent with those 4 things? And I'll bet, based on how you've described it, if I did this exercise correctly, I would be able to look back and see where those 4 boxes or 4 points were at play or not at play.
Yep.
And how those projects or situations have panned out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, just with this whole thing that I've discovered after sharing it with multiple entrepreneurs and speaking to multiple 7-figure owners and just all walks of life, friends and stuff like that too, who aren't entrepreneurs, subconsciously, we thrive off of our kind of 4 core things. And you may not know them, you may not have pinpointed or identified them by putting them on a piece of paper. But if something is lacking in your life, it's because one of those 4 things is missing. Now, the minute you are able to put them on a piece of paper and know what your core 4 things are, now it's easy to look back on your life and say, oh man, no wonder I was miserable. No wonder I didn't like this. Look at how zero freedom I had. I was stuck, or I wasn't able to be active whatsoever over the last 6 months. And I thrive off of being active, right? Whatever it may be.
Absolutely. I reckon I can definitely see the freedom piece within me. That's definitely one of mine, but I'll have to sit down and nail these out for myself because I'm curious now. And I think many people are curious as well. But I want to shift things up again now. And we've spoken a lot about kind of what has been or the past and the stories from there. But I want to lead into the future to what's next for you. What are your plans from here?
Well, Funnelytics as a company is just in its infancy. We launched really kind of in December of 2017, and then really in terms of acquiring customers and launching our beta of our analytics tool. That launch happened in February of this year. So very much in its infancy. I want to really grow this company. I really want to create massive impact in the marketing space and really turn this into the best analytics tool in the entire market. I want Google to take notice of Funnelytics. I want them to kind of be like, okay, who is this guy and what is he doing? But beyond that, it's about continuing to live my life as an entrepreneur with my wife and my daughter, and continuing to evolve and grow, and sharing my experiences, sharing my stories, and continuing down that path, and motivating and inspiring people. Because I've gone through a lot of trials and errors, and a ton of them, made a ton of mistakes, and I don't believe that you can ever learn from other people's mistakes. I think you can get wisdom and inspiration and foresee potentially making a mistake, but ultimately you're going to have to make your own mistakes and whatnot. But if I can inspire people and get them excited about becoming entrepreneurs and whatnot, that's also something that really drives me. Even investing in entrepreneurs and investing in business ideas and people who are trying to make a massive impact. That's where I'm headed. That's where I want to kind of be. And that's kind of the foreseeable future, at least. From there, we'll see.
It's very, very awesome ambitions, in all honesty. I like the way you're thinking on many levels. So where's the best place people can come and see and hear more about what you're doing? And I'll just shout one out in the beginning is funnelytics.io is where someone can come and have a look at your analytics tool. But is there anywhere else? Do you do any social feeds or videos or anything like that?
It's funny. I'm actually quite a private person. I'm an engineer by like mindset, and even though like I went to school as an engineer, so I'm really one of the
Ooh,
geeky.
I'm sorry there. We just lost the audio again. I'll just get you to check your headphone jack again on that if you've moved anything.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's much better. We'll just repeat that. I got you're a private person, and we'll just continue from there.
Yeah. So I'm pretty much a private person. I was like I said, an engineer, and I'm pretty geeky, and I just sit behind my computer a lot of times. So I really don't do much on social media. I'm trying to do a little bit more. But the best, easiest way is just Google or Facebook me, hit me up on Facebook, and we can have a chat, just search me up. But Funnelytics.io is kind of the software that we're building. And eventually I'll have a website, maybe one day, probably. We'll see.
We'll put it out there. The first article or piece of content you should make is the 4 boxes. I think.
Okay.
Love to see that.
Perfect. I will.
And I'll make sure we include some show notes with links to your Funnelytics tool, and also so they can see your social pages and things like that. But that's going to be it for this episode from here. We're going to be wrapping it up. But I just wanted to say a massive thank you for sharing so much and being really honest and authentic, because it shows. And I'm a massive fan of what you've just discussed. And I'm even a bigger fan of what Funnelytics is doing in the space. Google, do take note. I know Google regularly listen to the show. So
exactly,
I'll take my advice from here.
You're amazing. Well, I appreciate you having me. This has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate all of the conversations we had beforehand as well. And this has been awesome. I'm glad we got the chance to chat.
Agreed on that one. So that's it for this episode from here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. As I mentioned, I'll make sure to include any links to anything discussed in the show notes, but really thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much, Mikael. That is it.